Hello everyone, Mr. Love here, coming to you from the diesel shop. Today we're just going to do two quick little tasks you'll need to know how to do for when you're reassembling your engine. We're going to plastic gauge the crankshaft and we're going to install pistons into the cylinder. So it should just be a quick little video today, so hope you get something from it. Here's our crankshaft at our engine here. So the purpose of plastic gauging is to check out the clearance here on the crankshaft underneath the main bearing cap. So when this is torqued down on there, you can't really get in there with a feeler gauge or anything, to check it out, especially if it was on one of these middle cylinders right here. So what plastic gauge is a tiny little strip that's enclosed inside here. We're going to take that little strip, we're going to lay it across our crankshaft here. We're going to torque down our main bearing cap down to spec. Then we're going to remove the main bearing cap. We'll see how much this little filament inside here expanded out. You can see on our plastic gauge here, we have different gauges that tells us if it's that thickness, it's spread out that far. That tells us our tolerance is that, far inside here. So plastic gauge comes in different sizes. This one here only does from 1/1000 up to 3/1000. They make other ones that go up higher. For ours, this calls for 2/1000 oil clearance inside there. So that's right within spec here. So if it was below that, that means our crankshaft would be too tight. It wouldn't get any lubrication. If it was above the 3/1000 inside there for clearance, that means that it would be too loose inside there and we get play and it would wear out fast and probably spin the bearing inside there. So what we're going to do first, we're going to make sure everything's nice and dry. Usually when we install our crankshaft, we're going to have it nice and oiled up inside there, or we'll have some assembly lube on there. But for this, we want it nice and dry. We want the cap nice and dry. We'll inspect the bearing there. You should already measured your bearing and everything to make sure that was still good. So we want that nice and dry. Now we're going to take our paper here, our little coating of our plastic gauge. We're just going to cut off a small little piece. We don't want the piece to be any wider than our main bearing, so we'll cut off a piece that's about 1 inch wide here. Okay, so I got my little piece cut off here. So this is actually just the wrapper for it. So we're going to carefully open this up without dropping it here. They're very easy to drop. I drop them all the time. Oop, just like that one I did right there. A little hard to pick up. It's a very tiny filament. Okay, so I got it right now. We'll get it to focus again. You can see it's a very tiny little filament inside there. We're going to take that little tiny filament, and we're going to lay it crosswise right here, right on top of our connecting rod, or right on top of our crankshaft there. Now we're going to take our main bearing cap. We're going to make sure that it's facing the right way. This one's all labeled, has an arrow on it telling us which way to face it. We're going to carefully set it down on there, trying not to mess up our plastic gauge there. Okay, now we'll install the bolts. I'm going to run these in just part way with a ratchet, just to get them down there, and then I'll switch over to the torque wrench for the final torque on it. You want to do this nice and slow. You don't want to use an impact or anything because it'll make it tighter than you want it to be, or it'll make the thing blow out of there. Nice and slow. Evenly go back and forth a little bit here. Get them both snugged down just a little bit. Okay, we're just snugged down, just hand tight. Let's switch over to our torque wrench now. Okay, now we're going to torque it down the rest of the way with our torque wrench here. So this calls for 20 foot-pounds, which is 240 inch-pounds. This one's inch-pounds here, so we'll set it to where we need it to be. Make sure it's locked in good there. And we're just going to slowly torque it down. The click. The click. We'll just go back and forth, just make sure they're both at torque there. Remember, we don't want to over tighten, so as soon as it starts to move, we're going to let up. Okay, now we're going to switch back to our ratchet because we never use a torque wrench to back off. We're going to back off our torque wrench though and set it back to 0, so there's no spring tension on there. Okay, we got just our ratchet back. Now we're just going to remove the cap here. You got our bolts out. We'll carefully loosen up the cap here and we'll remove it. Okay, now if you look closely on our crankshaft there, we have a little spot where our plastic gauge is still left behind. We also have a little spot on our main bearing there where it's left behind. So what you're going to do is where it's left behind there, you're going to line it up with one of these little spots here on our little tab here. So we'll see where it lines up. So whichever one is the thickness there is where you want to be. So it's not 1/1000, it's not 3/1000. This one's actually right at 2/1000 where it's supposed to be. If you look on the one side of the paper here, we have it in inches. The other side's millimeters. You need to do that. But we're doing everything in thousandths of an inch, so we'll do it over on this side. So if you look right here, we're right at the 2/1000, right where we're supposed to be. So we're good to go on that one there. So normally you would do the same thing all the way down through for all our main bearings and all for our connecting rod bearings when we go to install our pistons onto the crankshaft. Remember, when you go to install this for our final time, after we're done plastic aging, we're going to lubricate everything really good. We're going to either use some engine oil or we're going to use some ultra slick if it's a good running engine assembly lube.